I want to thank Michael for pinch hitting for me today. It is greatly appreciated. And Rocky also leading the Litany of Penitence. I'd love to say that I was like rocking out to a Dropkick Murphys concert last night. Lost my voice, but I'm on like day 9 of laryngitis. So I wasn't sure if I'd be able to preach or not. So what I have here is a meditation, a reflection written by the Bishop of Western Louisiana. His name is Jake Owensby. And I did that in case I needed to hand this over to somebody else to read in my behalf. So this is what Bishop Owensby writes about today's gospel. He says, C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, also wrote another well-loved book called The Screwtape Letters, in which the fictional archdemon Screwtape, such a weird name, right? Screwtape sends his apprentice Wormwood a series of instructional letters. And in that correspondence, Screwtape impresses on the fledgling demon the best practices for tempting humans away from God. For instance, Screwtape writes, "It does not matter how small the sin. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that their cumulative effect is to edge the person away from the light and out into nothing. Murder is no better than gambling if cards will do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is a gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones or signposts." Right? Does that make sense, right? How many of us have committed murder in the last week? None of us, right? Or wanted to. Thank you, Mel. And in case you're wondering, that's not what happened to Bill, right? No, we haven't, right? But how many of us have broken another commandment, taking the Lord's name in vain, right? Probably, right? Which one is the bigger sin, right? Enticing people, Bishop Owensby writes, enticing people to commit monstrous sins is not the point and rarely succeeds. Instead, bit by bit, demons seek to turn our hearts away from God. They look to cause small erosions of faith over time, to convince us to make tiny compromises, and above all, to distract us from our highest purpose and chief desire, union with God. Now, you may or may not believe in demonic forces, but what C.S. Lewis writes about temptation rings true. Namely, the spiritual life is a matter of the heart. It's animated by desire, and human hearts are prone to wander. And no story illustrates this better than Satan's temptation of Jesus. For starters, Satan says, "If you really are the Son of God, right, turn these stones to bread." I mean, Jesus must have the ability, right? And he's got to be hungry. Where's the harm? Right? Small, gentle slope. Right? But there is harm for Jesus and for us, because the point of human existence is to desire what God desires, to exercise our will freely and intentionally, in a way that aligns our will with the divine will. Our chief desire, whether we realize it or not, is that kind of relationship with God. And by contrast, Satan is commending a different way to live that puts the focus not on God, but on ego, on self, on what we need, we desire. Okay? On the night before his crucifixion, Jesus prayed, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me, but not my will be done, but yours." Jesus teaches us that to truly exercise our free will, sometimes we have to give it up. We need to be willing, not willful. Bishop Owensby goes on to say, Satan next offers Jesus supreme earthly power in exchange for worship. And while the allure of power is quite a strong temptation, something more subtle is at work here. Satan urges Jesus to treat devotion as a transaction. And it's such a trap to treat relationships as transactions. We do this all the time, right? Sometimes with the people around us. If you do this, then I'm going to give you, right? But we also do this with God, right? How many times have we prayed, God, if you do this, then I'll believe you're true, right? If you, Lord, give me this job, this house I want, or even if you heal my loved one of their cancer, then I will trust you, God, okay? And I'll worship you. That's the second temptation. God's love for us is not transactional. And we genuinely love God when we love God above all else because God is God. Treating devotion as a transaction actually distorts our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. Finally, Satan dares Jesus to take a swan dive off of the temple. After all, he says, God promises to protect you, right? A lot of times people think that about their faith, that if we believe in God, then the life is going to be like smooth sailing for us, right? No bumps in the road, no trials, no temptations, everything's easy. That's the third temptation. Right? Basically, Satan is urging Jesus to do something, right, that we can often slip into. We have a knack of creating God in our own image. And we want God to do the things for us that we were basically going to do anyway. Right? We're looking for a thumbs up. By contrast, walking the way of Jesus is about transformation, not transaction. It's like saying to the risen Jesus, make of me what you will, because I am truly yours. Following Jesus offers us a path through the temptations in our life. And that's actually what Lent is about, this time, this 40 days, to refocus our life on the path of Jesus toward devotion. And we do actions to refocus us. And Bishop Owensby offers us a few ways that we can do that this Lent. The first one is confession, right? That's a lot of what Lent is about, right? Confessing means naming, recognizing the places in our lives that we are worshiping something that is not God, that we are doing actions that do not align with God's divine will for us. And we do that on Sundays in here when we do a corporate confession of sin. But during Lent, I invite you to do that privately on your own. And your prayer book, if you're not sure what to say, has several different forms for you. There's one called the Great Litany. It was the oldest part of our prayer book, written by Archbishop Thomas Cranmer in the 1500s. We still pray it. It's on page 148. Or you could do the shorter version, which is the one that Rocky led for us today. And if you're so inclined, you also can do private confession. We do that in the Episcopal Church. It's just not a requirement. And you would set up a time with me, and it's in the prayer book if you want to look it over. It starts on page 447. That's the first thing we do. To align our wills with God, we recognize that we are not God. Confession. The second thing we can do this Lent is to perform humble works of mercy. In the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus gives us as disciples our marching orders. And those are the things that we're supposed to be doing as followers. Jesus tells us that works of mercy are feeding the hungry, are caring for those without clothes or homes or health care. Jesus calls us to work for peace in a world bent on violence. So where can you spend your time this Lent doing humble works of mercy? You can also ground your faith in Jesus. Now, usually in Lent, we focus on giving things up, right? Coffee, chocolate, beer. And you can do that. But perhaps a better thing to do would be to ground yourself in your faith. And one thing that you could do would be to read a gospel during Lent. Mark is the shortest one. If you want an out, pick him. Okay. But if you were to read half a chapter of a gospel over the 40 days of Lent, you will have made your way through that. You could download a Bible app or open up your Bible if you still have one at home. And better yet, invite a friend to do it with you and then check in, even by text, on what you're reading and learning about. Ground yourself in faith. And lastly, Jesus, though fully God, when he was on earth, Jesus let God be in charge. So often we humans want to be the ones in charge and tell God what to do. But even Jesus didn't do that. Jesus let God be in charge. And it is a good reminder for us this Lent. God is God, and we are not. Give yourself over to the one who created you in love, redeemed you in love, and sustains you in love.